I just threw away my first pages of notes because Sandy pretty much covered what I was going to talk about, the Psalms, the hymns. So I'll save you from one page of my notes. But I would like to mention the fact that King David wrote most of the Psalms, or a lot of the Psalms, as Sandy said. If you remember how David was called, God directed the prophet Samuel to anoint a new king. He directed Samuel to go see Jesse, who had, I think, 8 sons, 7, 8, 9 sons, many sons. So Samuel was Jesse took Samuel to look over his sons, and he looked over his sons, maybe it must have been some kind of like a job application or something like that. But he reviewed the sons. He said, the Lord hasn't selected any of these sons. None of these are supposed to be the king. He said, don't you have any other sons? And Samuel said, I just have one. His name is David. He's out in the field. Or Jesse said he had one son who was out in the field watching the sheep. So he Jesse took Samuel out to the field to see David, and Samuel said, "Yeah, David was the one who was to be anointed." And said, God does not look at the outward appearance; He looks at the heart. And David had a heart for God, and he's out in the field watching the sheep, playing his harp, and singing psalms to God. So God knew David loved him. David was far from perfect, committing many sins. He did many terrible things. He always turned back to God and asked forgiveness. He had a special relationship with God. And that's what God wants most, a relationship with us. I'm reminded one of my favorite scriptures is Psalm 100. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is good. The Lord is God, and it is he who made us. We are his, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. So we enter into the presence of God with thanksgiving and with praise. I've missed singing our songs together at church. I have to admit that I've struggled mightily with not being able to get together at church and to sing together and see one another. We seem to be the only denomination now that's not meeting together, and we seem to be doing everything else but going to church. So it hasn't been easy for me. I've struggled, and I keep telling myself, don't think about what you do not have. Think about what you do have, and give thanks and praise to God for those things. Today is Mother's Day, and I, like all of you, are thankful for our special mothers. I'm especially thankful for my mother, who just turned 91 years old, my wife Kathy, and to Tara, the mother of our grandchildren. One of the things which attracted me to Kathy was her love for children. And Tara mentioned how she was attracted to Grant because she thought he would be a good father. When we were dating, Kathy taught a Sunday school class, and I noticed how the children really responded to her. On one of our dates, we even took her class to Cedar Point for a day. She was very good with children. And now Kathy watches our twin grandchildren 3 days a week while Tara works. I go over in the mornings on those days. I try to be there each morning. Just a couple weeks ago, Kathy said that Caleb said after his mom left, he said, my mommy is my best friend. And I think we probably could all say that. We all have the same feelings about our mother. Our mothers have been our best friends. And I think we all could say we stand on the shoulders of spiritual giants. To many of us, our mothers are our spiritual giants. We were studying, it's not a coincidence, I think it's a God instance today, as Rachel taught our adult class. The theme of the adult class was miracle of encouragement. And talks about the word encourage, which means literally to put the heart in us, I think we could all say that our mothers put the heart in us. I could even say that even my grandmother touched my life and put the heart in me. Today, our condolences go out to Joe and his family, whose mother, Katha, passed away from an aneurysm just a few days ago. If you've been watching, she's been attending our Zoom services. I think she might even have been on last week. Katha, you see her name on there each week. She's attended our congregation for the past couple years, and we've got to know her not as well as what we'd like, but I know that Katha loved her family. We've gone to Amber and Emma's piano recitals for 4 years. Kathy and I, my wife Kathy and I have, and Kathy was there each one. So I know she loved her children and her grandchildren. And we will miss Kathy, because of her faith. Now, she's had a really tough time this past year. She struggled a lot and sick a lot, but now we know that she's in a better place. This morning, I would talk a little bit about my mother, what's been happening recently. Actually, it's been over the last 3 or 4 years. If you go to Wednesday evening prayer service, I've asked for prayers for my mom many times because of the challenges of her health and her aging. My mother was a middle child of 9 children. She had 4 older sisters, and then she was born, and 4 younger brothers. She was a middle child of the family, and when one of my nieces talks about being the middle child of 3, my mom said, "I don't want to hear it. I was a middle child of 5." So she was a middle child of 9 children. Her father was killed in a coal mine when she was just 7 years old. He was killed on New Year's Day in 1938 in the heart of the Depression. Along with her older sisters, they each had to quit school when they were 16 and go to work at a factory that made men's slacks. They call it the Pants Factory. They all quit school when they were 16 to support the family. Mom never graduated from high school. I can remember as a young child walking with Mom and my sisters to the library just about every week. She read at each and every opportunity. College was not an option for her. She did go back and get her GED, but was after most of us had even graduated from high school. And we had a family of 5. My dad's dad also died when he was young. He was 8 years old. They lived on a small farm in Benton County, Ohio, and Dad always called it the poorest section of the poorest county in the state. After Dad got out of the Navy, he got a job at a steel mill in Jackson, not far away. One time, an opportunity for a promotion came up. 18 men applied for that promotion, and Dad saw the one that got the promotion. He only had 1 semester of school at Rio Grande. So Dad saw the value in education. So college was not an option for us. Our home was always like Grand Central Station. Our grandmother lived with us for many years, as well as Dad's younger brother lived with us at the same time that one of Mom's younger brothers lived with us. Our house was always open to everyone. We had a great uncle. It was my deceased grandfather's brother. I think his name was George. I really don't know his real name, but he was called Razor. Everyone in town called him Razor. I don't know how he got the nickname, but he was always very dirty, very filthy. He lived in a shack on the rough side of town, and he walked around town with his dog. And people in town made fun of him, but when he come by our house, Mom always took him in and fed him and listened to his stories. There was another lady named Temple who didn't have any family in town. She was very skinny. She smoked cigarettes, and she always put her cigarette in one of those long cigarette holders. You hardly ever see them anymore, but if you've ever seen them, you know what I'm talking about. They were like a foot long. And the cigarette with its holder was about as big as Temple was. She was really a funny looking. She kind of reminded us of Minnie Pearl with her stories. She always had some big stories that she's telling. She'd come to our house, knock on the door, and my mom's nickname was Teens because of her size. She didn't call Mom Teens, she called her Teeny. You'd hear someone knocking real loud on the door and hollering, "Teeny, Teeny, are you there?" We knew exactly who it was. Mom would bring her in, fix her dinner, and listen to her stories. She kept in touch with her till for many years, and I remember going to the nursing home in Jackson to see Temple. We had another family that lost their 2 children. They were close to my age. One was older, one was younger. Their mother died when they were younger, and their father worked in the coal mines, and he wasn't home very much. And mom often took them in and fed them. I saw her at a funeral a couple of years ago, and she still was talking about mom's cooking. So there was no strangers at our house, and it reminded me of Sharon Evans. There was always Sharon said when she was growing up, her mom always set out a plate, an extra plate for anyone that would come by, and Sharon continues that tradition today. There's always a place at the table for anyone that come by and would need something to eat. Um, Things was going great for us. Our family, Dad got a promotion. He worked in the office. He was a tester in the lab at the steel mill. But one day there was an explosion at the steel mill, and all the employees were called in, and there was a fire. All the employees were called in to fight the fire. I remember the families were standing across the street watching the fire. And they never opened the steel mill again. Dad was out of a job for 4 years, and took any job that he could get. There was an elder in the church. Many of you know him. He lived till he was over 100 years old. His name was Bob Smith. And Bob was a carpenter, and he took on extra work just so Dad could have a job and provide for the family. Mom was always at home when Dad was working in the church or away. Mom was always home taking care of the family. I remember one time, and I played sports. I played all the sports on it. I probably went through a pair of tennis shoes every month or two at least. I remember one time I had holes in my shoes, but the finances were so thin I didn't want to mention it to anybody. And eventually I wore holes in my socks, and Mom noticed it. So she got an extra job, a part-time job, made some money, and I think the first thing she did was bought me a new pair of tennis shoes. That's that's the way that she was. Dad finally got a job at another steel mill, making $88 a week, with 4 children at the time. That was tough to make it, so they took on extra jobs. I remember they'd put us to bed and they'd go out and paint homes at night. Uh, the president of there's probably 300 or 400 people working at the steel mill. The president of the steel mill took a liking to Dad. For some reason, he really liked Dad. So if there was any jobs they needed to pick up parts anywhere in the country, he'd ask Dad if he wanted to go, and Dad sometimes even took us to pick up those parts. He earned extra money that way. The president of the steel mill was an alcoholic, and he needed somebody to drive him everywhere he went. Well, his son happened to be a star on the Marshall University basketball team, and so Dad got to go to all the Marshall's games. He drove him to all the games. Marshall, and one time they played in New York City National Invitational Tournament. And I remember watching TV in black and white, looking for Dad at the game because they always sat right behind the team. But and Mom was home taking care of the kids. But one thing they did, one of the many things they did, was they always gave their first fruits to God. I remember they always had their envelope out every Sunday morning. Giving. We didn't have a lot, but they gave their pennies, nickels, and dimes, and sometimes a few dollars. I remember looking at those envelopes and boy, that would make we could have quite a few ice cream cones with that offering. But they didn't. And once in a while, we got to go out and have an ice cream cone after Sunday night or Wednesday night service, and we went to all of them. When the church doors were open, we were there. Maybe once a month, we'd go out for ice cream after church. Or in the winter, we might have a bottle of pop. Not very often, but we did. But I've heard many stories. I'm reminded of the stories I've heard from people in our congregation, especially those who grew up in Southern Ohio. The same things happened to them. Their families struggled to make ends meet. I've heard stories from about Sharon, and them always. And Sharon coming from a large family. I think maybe a dozen kids, something like that. I've heard her stories. Stories from Ginger Tinkler about the large garden her mom and dad had, and how they worked hard. The children worked hard in that garden. They shared with others of the excess, and they still do. Ken and Ginger still have a garden. They still share of their excess with friends. Stories of Faith Kelly, Betty Gilmer's mom. who I think she said she purchased a 20-pound bag of potatoes every week, and to feed 9 children. Uh, Amazing stories about Nora and her father, who was a janitor to school, squeezing a penny and stretching a dollar farther than anyone ever could. Uh, and Ron Hager, Ron grew up in the heart of Appalachia. We grew up in the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains, but he grew up in Appalachia. I think he had 13 brothers and sisters. They worked hard and struggled to make ends meet. Joe Glandon, I was just talking to Joe a few weeks ago about his dad, Jerry, who was a pastor of our congregation for many years. He was a milkman in the poor area of Columbus. German Village was a poor area of Columbus, and he lost his job. 6 kids, and he lost his job, but somehow they made ends meet. And Dave, I think, heard Dave say many times he didn't think his dad ever made, he worked in a cemetery, and he didn't think his dad ever made more than $10,000 a year. But he had a garden, which they all worked, and they were able to share. They had an abundance, and were able to share their abundance with many other people. And anytime you ever saw Sophie, she wanted to give you something. And a lot of people from our congregation used to get out and see Sophie, and she always sent them back with a gift. Just amazing. And stories from Mildred Bentley about Howard served in World War II. Then he was called back to the Korean War after Katrina was born. Mildred worked in a factory, in a shoe factory. But most of the time, the women, they had a lot of large families, blue collar workers, limited income, but they gave to church. Not only did they give to church, they gave to other people, and they gave of their tithing. And many of them had two or three jobs to make ends meet. And I can remember Howard saying, the men southeastern Ohio went to Camp Bountiful to work each Saturday. I went with my dad many times to work at Camp Bountiful. He said Howard said that they'd go there, and a lot of times they'd have workers, but they would have no money, no supplies for materials. And Howard said they'd send Dad out, and Dad was from that area. We were from that area, and Dad would go out to Jackson and Wellston in that area, church people and businesses, and ask for donations. He'd come back and with enough to keep them, and supplies, materials, and money to keep them going for a day. That's how Camp Bountiful was built. Pennies, nickels, and dimes, and everything was done by volunteer labor. It's amazing the things that was done by volunteers, and all this time, the women were at home managing the home, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, their clothes, and usually, in the case of my mom, managing the budget, which wasn't easy. But if you think about Camp Bountiful, you can think about the men that worked there many, many Saturdays. And they served on the board. And the board meetings from then sometimes started Saturday morning and ended on Sunday morning, so they could leave and go to church. There's a lot of sacrifices made. I can remember John Roberts calling me one time and said, John was on the board of Camp Bountiful, and he's in charge of purchasing the supplies. And he said, we got enough supplies to build 3 cabins. He said, if you can get me 40 people to work on 3 Saturdays, I think we can build the 3 cabins. So I started calling around the congregation. We had 40 people from our congregation go down for 3 straight Saturdays, and we built 3 cabins. They're the 3 cabins closest to the lodge. But it was all done by volunteer labor. One thing that I was thinking about that they all had in common, none of them that I know of, I don't even think they existed back then. They never had credit cards. They did all this without credit cards. And I've noticed that the credit cards make it so easy to overspend, and they create so much stress on the family. I've seen many divorces, and it seems like, I would guess 75, 80%. I don't know those are valid statistics, but every time it seems like there's a divorce in the family, they've had financial problems. And credit cards did not help the situation. None of them had credit cards. They made it without credit cards. So if I'd give any advice, I'm not sure it's spiritual advice, but I'd give any advice to any of you today: do not throw away your credit cards if you can't control them, because you'll never get away from the burden that they carry. It causes extreme stress. That unnecessary spending, excessive spending, causes extreme stress on a relationship and on a family. As most of you know, my father passed away 9 years ago after 62 years of marriage, and most of the people I've talked about had been married that many years themselves. And in the in the past month, we've moved Mom into a senior care facility. As many of you know, and have been praying, it's been a long ordeal. Mom's short-term memory is fading, and that I think she has dementia like her older sister did before they died. Her eyesight is very bad. She won't wear a hearing aid, so she can hardly hear what you're saying. In addition, she has a bad back, and she had a stroke a couple of years ago and has appeared to be losing her reasoning is not like it used to be. Sometimes she's very lucid, other times she doesn't make any sense at all. For many years, my sister Sue and Connie, both of them live across the street from Mom, have been taking care of her, and Connie also takes care of her husband, who's been feeble the last couple of years. They've been doing everything for her: shopping, preparing food, doctor's appointments, paying her bills for her, and anything else she needs. My brother Doug, who lives also close by, comes in to check on her and take care of the house, the property, and anything else Mom needs. But Mom was still lonely and unhappy. She made it known to us she was lonely and happy. She needed to get out of that house, but she didn't want to go to an assisted care facility, a nursing facility. She always said, "I'll know when the time comes, and I will decide when it's time to move into a spatial care facility." Well, that was about 5 years ago, and she kept saying that. Nothing we could do or say could convince her that she needed more help. My sisters both have grandchildren in different states, and after COVID, they plan to go see them. They haven't seen them much for a year, so they couldn't do anything with Mom. She probably, how people are when they get that way, they listen to people that they're closest to the least. She'd listen to their hairdresser and the cleaning ladies, but she wouldn't listen to Connie and Sue, and very little to my sister Kay and myself. So Connie and Sue finally threw up their arms a couple months ago and said, "We just can't do it. We just can't handle any more." And each time they'd tell Mom, encourage Mom, she wouldn't speak to them. She'd go in her bedroom, wouldn't come out, and she refused to talk about it. So about a little over a month ago, we decided, Kay thought, my sister in Lexington said, "I'm going to write a letter explaining the situation to Mom in writing," because she wouldn't talk to anyone about it. So she explained the situation. She told Mom she could afford to go pretty much anywhere she wanted, and explained that Connie and Sue would be gone a lot and wouldn't be able to be there for her. And the plan was it was a last-ditch effort. The plan was for Kay to come up during the week and talk to Mom, give her the letter, which we'd all read and approved, and tried to get Mom to make a decision. Well, Mom, I think she read the letter, but she wouldn't discuss it. And so Kay left discouraged. And then I went down Friday and I began to talk to Mom about her need, the need for more care than we could give her, because we loved her. And she didn't really want to talk about it all. She pretty much shut me off. Later that evening, my sister Sue came over, and we went out for a drive and got ice cream with Mom. But we're sitting in the car eating the ice cream. Mom said, she said, "I'll drive by Morning Point." And there was 2 nursing homes fairly close to her. One was called Trinity. She'd given Trinity a deposit about 4 or 5 years ago, and she swore they took her money, but she changed her mind. They did refund her money, but she forgot about that. She said, "I'll never live in Trinity." She said, "Well, I'll drive by Morning Point." So we drove by. We didn't go in. So we went home that evening, and so we began the conversation. I began the conversation the next morning about her, and she didn't want to talk about it. She finally raised her hands up in there. She said, "Just put me where you're going to put me. Take me where I need to go." I said, "Mom, we're not going to make the decision. We want you to make the decision where you're going." So she got quiet. At least I felt pretty good, because at least she didn't go in the bedroom and wouldn't talk about it. So my sister Connie came over and started cleaning the kitchen. All of a sudden, Mom said, "Well," she said, "I'll go over and look at Morning Point." So I got on the phone immediately, called Morning Point, and they said, "Sure, we're available now. You can come over and we'll schedule a meeting and a tour." We went over, and they were very friendly, very nice. We took the tour, went through the meeting. Because Mom's limited hearing, I'm not sure she understood a lot, but she did. The only thing she complained about was the rooms were a little larger. They had your own a nice place. It's called Morning Point. If you've been to see Howard, Howard was at Story Point. It was almost exactly like Story Point, but Mom was convinced that she couldn't afford that place. So, so I left, and Mom asked me to administer to her before I went back to Columbus. So I did. I put my hands on her, prayed, anointed her with oil, and prayed for her. And after as I was leaving, Mom said, "Well, don't get your hopes up about me going over there." So I left pretty discouraged about the whole situation. Later that evening, Doug, my brother Doug, went over to visit Mom. He texted all of us and said that she would go to live at, Mom said she would go to live at Morning Point if she could buy all new furniture. And boy, it didn't take my sister long. I think within 2 days they had Mom out shopping for furniture, and she had bought furniture for the place. They didn't waste any time at all. A few weeks later, when the apartment became available, I went down, and all 5 of us moved in Mom with no problem. It's a very nice apartment with their own room, kitchen, restroom, and bedroom. Nurses are available at any time. Has an outside patio, so she can go directly outside from her room. She's accepted the change much better than what we ever thought. I forgot to mention that the Saturday morning, I'm leaving out some of my notes, but the Friday night, after we drove by the place, the next morning I got up and I went to walk at the park. It's called Central Park in Ashland, Kentucky. I walked for a couple hours and I prayed for a miracle. I said, God, we're just not getting anywhere at all. We need a miracle. Remember reading the book, You Were Born for This, reading about miracles. I said, we've done everything we can do. I said, we need a miracle. So the miracle continued. A couple of weeks ago, she started meeting. The first night she was there, they had a fire alarm. She was in the shower. They had a fire alarm. She thought it was an earthquake. She went out and somebody had left their food in the microwave and burned it, and there was smoke everywhere. But it worked out good because she met a couple people. The next day, she locked herself out of the room and couldn't get in. She had to go back to the office. She met a couple more people. And they encourage you to go to breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the cafeteria so you can exercise. And when Mom went there, she almost could not even get up to walk. She has a walker. She couldn't even get up by herself. But she did meet some people. She started going to meals in the cafeteria, and it's been going really good, better than what we even imagined. And a couple of weeks ago, she came back from lunch on a Saturday and said, she said that I've just had the best lunch I've ever had in my life. I was thinking, well, last year for her birthday, we went with the family. I sat beside her. I bought her lunch, and she had steak and lobster. I said, Kathy, I'll sit beside Mom because I know she can eat a hamburger last 2 meals for her. So I'll sit beside her and I'll eat the rest of the steak and lobster. Wouldn't you know, she ate every bite of it. She ate it all. So yesterday when I was down there, I asked her what she wanted for Mother's Day. I went down Friday and asked her what she wanted for Mother's Day. And she wanted that steak and lobster again. Then we asked her, I felt a little bit offended that steak and lobster wasn't the best meal she'd ever had. So we asked her, what's the deal? The best meal you ever had? She said, well, I wore my red shoes down there for lunch today, and everyone complimented me on the shoes. She liked the attention. Now she's ordered a brand new wardrobe. She said her clothes isn't as nice as everyone else's, which they are. She looks like everyone else there, but now she wants a whole new wardrobe. She loves the attention. So yesterday, my brother came over. We ordered the menu to pick up at the restaurant. My brother said, I just can't believe we're getting steak and lobster and eating it in the car at the park. Couldn't get his head around that. So, but anyway, Mom had her steak and lobster, and again, she ate it all. She's been eating great. She can walk around by herself. She hasn't complained once about her back. She hasn't said one time that she wants to go back home and live, but she did, and she's always been full of surprises. She did say one thing. She said, I'm feeling good. I think I can take care of myself now. I said, go ahead. I've never been back to the house. She said, but I want to buy a small house and live in it. Well, she's not able. she's not able to live in a small house. She couldn't take care of herself at all. Was they even come to remind her to take her medicine over there, but she thinks she can. So we still need prayers for her, and she still needs prayers, and she still really needs a miracle. But it's 100 times better than it was just a month ago. And in closing today, I'd just like to talk a little bit about miracles. Dave and Lee, I see them on today. 10 years ago, I think they taught a class on Sunday evenings at our church, and it's called You Were Born for This. And remember that class? And just a year or two ago, we studied that book once again. You Were Born for This, and it was about miracles. And a miracle, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. Before I close, it's a miracle is defined as an intervention by God which involves unexplainable or supernatural events. Miracles happen every day. In fact, that is why we're here. What we're here for. That's why we're here. Our purpose is to carry on God's work. People do not perform miracles. God performs miracles, but He needs people to deliver the miracles so He can carry out His work. Miracles happen when a person pre-commits to following the lead of God's Holy Spirit to direct them to deliver God's message and His love to another person in need. After you pre-commit, you have to be on high alert, being aware of something very unusual that you see or hear or feel in your heart, or something that comes into your mind, something really unusual. It will happen. This will happen if you're pre-committed and are very alert and aware of the surroundings. God will arrange the miracle event. He will not expect you to do something that you're not able to do. I know I've been a part of a few myself, and each time that I've been a part of these miracles or delivered the miracle for God, it's something that I'm comfortable doing, something that I've done before, situations that I've been in before. So He won't ask you to do anything that you never have done before, but you have to be ready to respond, and you have to be ready to act, and you have to be ready to risk. You have to be ready to intervene on God's behalf to deliver a miracle. It usually happens in the course of your daily activities. In a world of tremendous suffering and need, you're called to be God's miracle. And I've noticed too, what sometimes it happens when you're the busiest, on your busiest day, at the busiest time of the busiest day, God intervenes and puts that miracle, that opportunity for a miracle right in front of you. And I've passed those opportunities up many times, but we are called to do this, to deliver a miracle to a person in need. I guarantee you that nothing is more exciting, nothing's more rewarding, nothing will fill your heart and another person's heart more than delivering a message of God's love to a person in need. You too will be alive again. I'd like to close with our church's mission prayer. God, where will your Spirit lead today? Help me be fully awake and ready to respond. Grant me courage to risk something new and become a blessing of your love and peace. Amen. Thank you.